So in this part, we'll be looking at connecting our PHP to my SQL server, build the user registration interface, collect user data and post to database, on and on and on. Our menu agenda will grow up, but for now, I'm starting with this. So let's push it. My name is Jonathan, like you all already know. I welcome you to part 1C of our CMS project. So having downloaded and tested our servers, we have seen that it's running. Let's push to the next stage, connecting to. So this is our Visual Studio Code, popularly known as VS Code. So we'll head on to set up our project. So when working with VS Code, what I normally do is to create a folder for my project, a file, then click on open folder. Okay, so to do that, we'll go to our XAMPP. Remember that I said htdoc. Docs folder is where you put your PHP file, and that is the only place your web project or application will run. Else it will not run. So that is the main server. I think in other in WAMP it's called root directory. Okay, so if you are using WAMP, please, you have to search through Google to get the folder where you put your file. But for XAMPP or SAMP, it is the htdocs. So I'll create a folder and name it CMS and click on select folder. To open it in our development environment. So the good thing about the Visual Studio Code is that it enables you to run different kind of programming language. All you need to do is to install an extension that makes it more effective for your usage for the particular one you're using. But for this PHP, I've actually installed no extension. So as time goes on, if there is need, I will do that. So let's create our first file, index.php. So you type in the index and put .php as an extension. That makes Visual Studio Code to recognize it as PHP file. Else, it will look like an empty file. So if it is JavaScript you want to create, you make it index.js. If it is CSS, you make it index.css. So that will make it recognize the application you are running. And please, if you are not familiar with with CSS styling and HTML, so I have another project that I have done. I'll put the link in the description below that you can look up and learn one or two things about CSS. And if that is not enough, you want a beginner's tutorial, don't forget to chat me, drop a comment, and I will make a video regarding that. So let's go ahead and look up our file on the localhost server. So when you are putting your file in the right folder, htdocs, all you need to do is to click on on your web browser. You just enter localhost and it will open your PHP server interface. Okay, PHP admin is where you go to manage your database. Okay, and remember, all this will not show if you don't start the Apache, the one cPanel. Okay, and for that, I have set mine to always start each time my system comes up. That is why I didn't bother to do that, but you can do that on your own. So go ahead and I'll create my database and call it customer underscore management underscore system. So the first table I will be creating in the database is called users. So want to handle user registration so that you can have different admins, you can automate the admin aspect. The super admin can create more admins that can manage the system. So this is not the table for customers. This is actually for the users of the system. So the fields have the ID, have the username, we have the email, password. As I remember more fields or as the need arises, I'll be adding more fields. That is the good thing about PHP MyAdmin. You can add and remove fields as the thought occurs to you. You know, I didn't set out a requirement for this. So as time goes on, I might be making changes. This project is not pre-built. I'm building it from scratch with you. So please, you can pause, listen, replay, type out, you know, the code, and still play to follow, so that you can easily grasp what is going on. So we'll give data types to our variables. So the ID, I left it to be int, the username varchar, and the rest of them variable characters. So I'll be giving the username the length of 20. I don't expect people to have a username longer than that. Email addresses 30. Then password, because we are going to be hash coding the password, I'll put it at 60. So we'll make the ID auto increment and primary key. Okay, and click go. Then finally we click save. I think we are good to go. Sorry, my clicking, since my system seems to be hanging. Okay, All right. So we have created our first table with the fields ID, username, email, and password. So this is where we'll add more fields or columns if need be. So after the password field, I'll add one more. That is date created, because I want a record of the dates each users are created. If need be, we need a query for that. Need a proof. You need to show that this user was actually created on so day. That is, if you've forgotten the day you set up the user. It is important. So you can make it variable character or date timestamp. Of choosing to make it current timestamp so that I don't need to populate it. It will automatically populate as we insert each user. So it will give that particular time that user is being inserted into the database. So I'm inserting another field for token key. So I can use that to authenticate users as they try to access the system. Sorry, since I just occurring to me. We'll also need images for the admin. Okay, the admin pictures. So I think with this, the admin profile is complete. Good. So let's see how we can connect to our database and insert those parameters. So we have different types of different ways in which we can connect to our database. We have the PDO format and we have the procedural format. Okay, and the previous procedural formats which is being used has been duplicated. It's no longer used. So using MySQL, Connect, and the rest of them. That was actually what's the one we used in those days to learn PHP database connectivity. Well, what we use now is similar to that, but instead of MySQL, we have MySQLi. So this is more of object oriented, and there is also pure object oriented method, okay, known as PDO. Remember, we start our PHP by opening a PHP tag and closing PHP tag. Don't forget that. If you don't put that, even if you named your file with the appropriate extension, which is .php, your app will not run if you don't put the right tag. So the less than open tag with question mark, then PHP, then the question mark and closing with the greater than sign or symbol. Okay. So I will list out the parameters for connecting to the server, to MySQL server, that is our database. And the first parameter there is the server name. And because it is installed in our system, it is called localhost. We use localhost, though there is also numeral representation like our IP addresses. Okay, I usually use localhost. So you have your username, roots, and password, empty character. Remember that when we were installing, I said there is no need of putting a password so that we don't forget. But in our production environment, there is absolutely need for that. So let's create our connection. So I'll use the parameter or the variable con to hold a connection to the MySQL database. It's equal to new MySQL line and okay. So put the server name, the username, and the password. Okay. So let's check connection. Let's try and establish the connection. So I will use the conditional statement, if statement. If connection, so if there is a connection error, then bring out the message, output the message, So in MySQL, we use die. Connection failed. Remember to always end each of your statements with a semicolon. If you're working with JavaScript, React, and especially React, you might ignore all those. If you're working with Python, it's not that necessary. But if you're working with PHP, the syntax must be maintained. Else, you'll have error. So if we have error, show me the message connection failed and give the actual error message. So okay, from my SQLi connect error, then else, that is if there's no error, let me know. I've connected successfully. Save. Let's view that in our browser. Localhost CMS. Remember, that is the name of our folder. I don't need to enter index.php because that is the first thing that the browser will look up if once you type the path correctly, and you can see that we are connected successfully. So I want to quickly make that bold by putting it in the H1 tag. So save, Ctrl S and refresh. That is it, connected successfully. So our database has been able to establish connection, and that has shown that it's working fine. Okay. That is working perfectly fine. All right. We are good to go to the next part. So don't forget to subscribe to my channel. It will actually give me great joy if you do that.